American students think outside the box to design light, durable, and quickly deployable Ebola clinics. A Malawian student makes his mark on the high-tech global stage. And a musician and philanthropist announces a reboot of a charity disc, this time aimed at combating Ebola. Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello, I'm Lenore Moudou. Vincent McCurry is on assignment. This is Africa 54. We begin in Nigeria, where top government officials are following up on a Safe Schools initiative launched after the abduction of the Chibok schoolgirls. Gloria Umezeoke of Channels TV reports.
More than 6 months have elapsed since the news of the abduction of over 200 Chibok schoolgirls first emerged. Weeks after, Nigeria became submerged in a new kind of crisis. Many school children in the affected areas were not able to go to school for fear of more terrorist attacks. As a follow-up to the federal government's launch of the Safe School initiative on June 17, the President inaugurated a steering committee chaired by the Coordinating Minister of the Economy and Minister of Finance, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala.
Parents who have said that they would like their children from JSS 1 and above to SS3 to go to schools, unity schools in other parts of the country, north and elsewhere, have made themselves known. We have identified 800 students per state for a total of 2,400 students. There are about 42 schools or so that will receive them. The principals and everybody, they've been sensitized, and we are going to commence the launch of this immediately. The students will go on full scholarship. All their needs will be provided.
The federal government is determined that this initiative would bring hope for many of these parents and children in the violence-torn areas whose sense of safety have been shattered.
We have discussed on this issue that some facilities are going to be provided again in the schools, because mind you that the students that are initially in those schools have left the school for the IDPs to be in the schools. So this program is going to include adding some facilities to those students so that they can go back to schools.
The security situation is challenging, but the security sector is working extremely hard to bring stability back to that region. And I think it's through this type of effort that we send the message that the country is united and can in fact work together with its partners domestically, internationally, to address this big challenge of insurgency.
Well, this latest action by the government marks another turning point for the numerous children most affected by terrorist activities. While the world, however, continues to observe how the country tackles other issues, including the spate of abduction in the country. Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Officials in Mali say a nurse infected with the Ebola virus has died. This is the second death linked to Ebola in the country after a 2-year-old girl died last month. Officials say the nurse treated a man they believe also died after contracting Ebola. She worked at a clinic in the capital, Bamako, and now the clinic has been put under quarantine. Mali borders Guinea, where the Ebola outbreak began last year. More than 400 health workers at the only Ebola treatment center in southern Sierra Leone went on strike on Wednesday. A representative of the striking workers, Mohamed Mbawa, says the government has not paid risk allowances since September, and he also says the strike will continue until workers have been fully reimbursed. The clinic in Banda Juma has about 60 beds for Ebola patients. UN officials warn that the number of Ebola cases is surging in Sierra Leone due to a lack of treatment centers. So far, the government has not commented. And a project taken on by 11 graduate students at Texas A&M University's School of Architecture to design light, durable, and quickly deployable Ebola clinics recently attracted worldwide interest. As VOA's Greg Fleckers reports, the students came up with a variety of creative and practical solutions to the problem.
Architecture graduate students usually work on projects like the one shown in this model, contemplating large buildings and landscaping. But a few months ago, their class was given the challenge of designing clinics to treat Ebola in Africa. Texas A&M University Architecture School Dean Jorge Vanegas says they had to think light and portable.
something quick, modular, deployable that could actually satisfy a given program.
Celso Rojas concentrated on panels of aluminum, wood, foam insulation, and plastic that can be quickly connected together on site.
The other aspect of using this panel is since it is modular, if it is beyond the point where you can disinfect it, you can just replace it with a new piece.
His friend, Iranian-born Sohail Hamida, designed an accordion-like flexible structure.
We can fold it, put it in a container, put the container in a cargo, and then transport it to the site, having it expanded as long as we want.
Godi Nakardi, from India, uses the shipping containers themselves as part of the structure.
So I have like a double shell, so my inner shell would be like the plastic, the high-strength plastic. It's easier to de-sterilize and decontaminate, while the outer material can be the shipping container, which holds the weight of the people inside the module.
Shetsi Leiyu, from China, came up with an easily transportable unit that can be set up by pumping in air.
So this is my design. I use inflatable structure to support the whole unit.
Their professor, George Mann, says the Ebola crisis in Africa has created a high demand for such a clinic, which is not yet actually available.
As of now, these are simply ideas, and we hope that it can get to realization quickly.
Mann says the next step is to incorporate ideas from these designs into a prototype for testing. Up until now, architects have designed hospitals for treating a variety of illnesses and injuries, but Mann says highly infectious Ebola is different.
What we're suggesting by these is locating them in a remote place, self-sufficient, away from taking down a hospital and the personnel.
He also sees a problem beyond Ebola, as researchers struggle with microorganisms that have mutated and become harder to fight.
If diseases continue to become antibiotic resistant, all our health facilities will have to be rethought in a fundamental way.
So, for architecture students, there may be even more ambitious projects to come. Greg Flakus, VOA News, College Station, Texas.
African business leaders, officials of development finance institutions, and members of African Union countries recently committed to join forces to create and support a funding mechanism to deal with the Ebola outbreak and its consequences. Business leaders committed over $28 million as an emergency fund during an African Business Roundtable Summit on Ebola held in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Observers say the last decade had seen dramatic increases in donor funding for global health. However, recipients are often confronted with some challenges, including delay in accessing the funds. Joining us in the studio for more on the subject is Aaron Betru, Managing Director of Pledge Guarantee for Health, a financing partnership designed to increase the speed and efficiency of funding from international donors for health commodities. Mr. Betru, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So we see a lot about donors pledging money when there is a health crisis. Emergency funds are being put in place, but often people on the ground complain, where is the money? We don't have the resources. How does this work, really? Can you explain to us?
Thank you. To be honest with you, I think you're hitting it right on the head, that it's not necessarily just the amount of money that we make pledges, but actually how fast we move them. I think the best way to explain it is to tell you a quick short story. In 2011, we had a situation where in Zambia, they were waiting on a $5 million pledge from the World Bank. And this money was going to go specifically for the purchase of malaria bed nets for an impending rainy season that they were going to have. But the issue that was faced was the timing between when the pledges were made or even when the grants were agreed upon to the time that they were going to be in the hands of the procurement agents to buy the bed nets and deliver them in time was going to be 8 to 10 months. Now, here's a perfect situation where why should we be waiting?
Yes, indeed. Indeed. So why should we be waiting? How can we accelerate this process? And perhaps that's where you come in.
Absolutely. And so what we ended up doing in cooperation with the UN Special Envoy for Innovative Financing, as well as the World Bank and UNICEF, we provided what is normal in the private sector. We provided a financial guarantee to Standard Bank of South Africa. Standard Bank of South Africa opened up a line of credit for the Ministry of Health, and the nets were procured and started rolling in within 3 weeks. It's a simple process. It's not, even though we call it in our world innovative financing, but effectively it's a credit card that allows us to move rapidly to the needs in the country today and just avoid all the pitfalls around the slow response time that's typical in this industry.
Are there some fees associated with this?
Yes, there are some interest expenses that are associated with this, but what we try to do is work with the private sector, work with either the commercial banks to lower their fees, work with the suppliers to actually absorb the cost of the financing. And in every single case, we've actually been able to make the cost completely negligible. And we have to think about the actual cost on the other side of it, of not acting, of not moving fast.
Yes.
Forget about the number of lives saved, which is paramount, but there's also all the inefficiencies that we get from just inefficient uses of aid, from switching from sea freighting to air freighting, all these different things.
And sometimes corruption. People talk about,
absolutely.
You know, it's one of the issues, but not the only thing.
No, absolutely. How you account for that money and how you use it. Now, when you're bringing in all the private sector in the special places that we do, at the end of the day, you get better governance and better oversight as well as rapid response and recouping all that inefficient use of the money.
What have you observed with the Ebola crisis specifically?
I think one of the things we can easily point to is I think the UN Special Envoy recently identified that, yes, the need that was originally calculated by OSHA was about $1 billion. Looks like it's actually going to be an extra $500 million going through to the next year. And of that, the trust fund that has been set up, only about 120 commitments and pledges have been placed. But of that, only 13 million has actually arrived and 8 million actually deployed. See how quickly we've gone from 1.5 billion to just 8 million on the ground.
That's mind-boggling. We hear these big numbers, and then at the end of the day, either it doesn't get there quickly enough, but how do people take advantage of your program? Are countries or NGOs aware of what is being put in place here?
So recently, the U.S. government and the Swedish government banded together to support the creation of a $100 million guarantee fund, where we took that and partnered with some private sector players like EcoBank and Calvert Foundation to create a $100 million rapid response fund, which basically means when you've got pledges in hand and you actually need to move faster, we'll place a financial guarantee with these financing partners that will turn on the capital as quickly as possible so you can have the money to buy these temporary health centers or mobile hospital units and move them into the facility very quickly. I think there was an article written recently at the New York Times, I think yesterday or the day before, where the UN envoy, Dr. Navarro, said, you know, we need to shift away from building these 100+ large mega centers in places like in Monrovia where the spread has flatlined a little bit and have these fast response ones that can go into places like Sierra Leone where the rates are increasing.
Okay, we have to leave it there, unfortunately. Mr. Betru, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And that was Aaron Betru. He's Managing Director of Pledge Guarantee for Health. Now, senior U.S. State Department officials say talks with Iran over its controversial nuclear program have been tough, direct, and serious, but they declined to say if progress was made. The officials talked to reporters after Secretary of State John Kerry, Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif, and EU negotiator Catherine Ashton wrapped up 2 days of negotiations in Oman. VOA's Pam Dawkins has the story.
With a November 24th agreement deadline on the horizon, negotiators in Oman have made a last-minute push to resolve differences. Ahead of the talks, Secretary of State John Kerry ruled out linking negotiations on Iran's nuclear status to other issues affecting the region.
The nuclear negotiations are on their own. They are standing separate from anything else, and no discussion has ever taken place about linking one thing to another.
A major sticking point in the talks has been balancing Iran's insistence that it has a right to enrich uranium with Western concerns that Iran wants to make nuclear weapons. Two senior State Department officials said they were not going to characterize the state of the talks. One added, there is time between now and the November 24th deadline to resolve issues regarding technical work and political decisions and reach an agreement. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani is facing internal pressure to reach a nuclear deal, says non-proliferation expert Robert Einhorn.
He was elected on a platform of strengthening the economy, and I think he understands that to strengthen the Iranian economy, he needs to get the sanctions lifted. And to get those sanctions lifted, he needs a nuclear deal.
But the Iranian president is also facing pressure from the other side, says Middle East analyst Melissa Dalton.
I think, though, that it's quite certain that the supreme leader has the ultimate say, and he publicly has been very strong on Iran having the right for civilian nuclear use.
After Zarif, Kerry, and Ashton wrapped up their negotiations, the talks continued at the political directors level in Oman. Pam Dawkins, VOA News, Oman.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, a Malawian student makes his mark on the global high-tech stage. Stay with us.
I am Shaka Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
A student at the University of Malawi is making his mark on the global stage with his cutting-edge innovation called the Padoka charger. The device has been entered into a tech competition taking place next week in Morocco. VOA's Paul Ndiho has more.
Humility is what describes a 24-year-old Mixon Falwaki, who is pursuing a degree in education science and majoring in physics. He is part of a new breed of young African innovators that are trying to change Africa's image. On campus, he's just a regular student. In fact, very few students know about his innovation that is creating a buzz on the international scene. Falwaki has been named one of the finalists, competing in this year's Global Innovations Through Science and Technology, or GIST Tech 2014 Awards in Morocco.
Padogo charger is an innovation which is enabling those people living in rural areas of Malawi and the other neighboring countries to use their bicycle, which they use for transport, to also use it for charging their mobile phones and powering other devices such as a radio and also a torch.
Falwaki is part of a talented group of students that have been tasked to find homegrown solutions to some of the problems Malawians are facing. He says thinking outside of the box is what drove him to be creative.
I had to think of a project that I could come up with, and that project should solve problems that are faced by Malawians. So in my mind just came the issue of a charger that could be used for charging mobile phones, but that charger should not call for the electricity that we have, many people in Malawi do not have access to. So that's when I thought of coming up with the Padogo charger.
Among his peers, he is well respected and he has become an inspiration to many of them. He explained how his innovation works.
This Padogo charger is using a bicycle dynamo. When one is riding the bicycle, as the wheel rotates, it also rotates the wheel for the dynamo, the generator. And then that power is fed into the charger. The charger which I designed, and then the whole process of the electrification, regulation, and all other processes to make sure that the power is usable for charging mobile phone occur at this stage. This is the output, the power comes out, then it goes to your mobile phone, and that's how your mobile phone will be charging.
In places like Zomba, Malawi, where very few have access to electricity or solar power, inventing a low-cost battery or phone charger mounted on a bicycle that people can use to charge their phones has been a long time coming.
In Malawi, most of us rely on bicycle transport simply because it is cheap, and we do have so many people running this business of bicycle taxi. Like this, the bicycle we are using now is meant for bicycle taxi service. Yeah, so these people, they don't have, most of them, they don't have access to home electricity. So they'll be using this product for charging their mobile phones.
Despite some challenges, the young entrepreneur is focused on perfecting his innovation ahead of the competition. The event organizer, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, says Mixon Falwaki's innovation was selected alongside other 65 innovations from a total of 502 worldwide. However, Falwaki is yet to earn any money from his innovation.
Once we have the funds for mass production, the product will build the market and people will access it.
Tech analysts in Africa say Mixon Falwaki's achievement is great, but it will take him years to release the product on the market. But they say his product has the potential to change the image of Malawi. Reporting for VOA News, Paul Ndiho, University of Malawi, Chancellor College.
It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, a musician and philanthropist announces a charity disc in the fight against Ebola. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Mali, a nurse has died from the Ebola virus, making her the second fatal case and first transmission of the disease in the country. In Ethiopia, thousands of refugees from South Sudan are displaced following flooding at a camp that holds close to 47,000 people. In Zambia, President Michael Sata, who died on October 28th, is buried. The African Union calls for stable electoral transition. Finally, in Morocco, the country is dropped as host of the Africa Cup of Nations football tournament after asking to postpone the event because of Ebola concerns. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here is what's trending. Musician and philanthropist Sir Bob Geldof, who in 1984 inspired a generation of rock stars to record a charity single for Africa, will raise money to combat Ebola with a new version of the song. Geldof, a frontman for Irish new wave band the Boomtown Rats, pulled together the Band-Aid supergroup for Do They Know It's Christmas? 3 decades ago to help those affected by famine in Ethiopia. The new lineup is expected to include boy band One Direction and singers Ed Sheeran and Sam Smith. So stay tuned. Next, it's official. Joseph Gordon-Levitt will play Edward Snowden in a movie directed by Oliver Stone about the former National Security Agency contractor who blew the whistle on the U.S. government's mass surveillance programs. Gordon-Levitt has acted in many high-profile films, including Lincoln, The Dark Knight Rises, and Inception. The still entitled Snowden film goes into production in Munich in January. And finally, an angel gets her wings. Victoria's Secret angel Carly Kloss prepared to take flight in her 4th fashion show for the women's intimate apparel brand. The model tried on the wings she will wear during the show. For the first time in the show's history, it will be filmed outside of the U.S., across the pond in London. It will be seen in approximately 200 countries on December 9th. And that's what's trending today. Now the umbrella movement is still occupying the streets of Hong Kong, and there are no signs of a negotiated conclusion. Demonstrators are making plans to safeguard the creative legacy of the pro-democracy campaign. Evan Broadhead reports from Hong Kong.
From sculpture and installation art to origami and animation, the democracy campaign has unleashed a wave of creative protest. Art has helped the movement evolve far beyond its goal of occupation, says Samson Wong, co-founder of the umbrella movement Visual Archives and Research Collective.
All of a sudden it becomes not just a political movement, it's also a movement of reflecting on our everyday life, reflecting on our own capacity to create, to form a community.
At the heart of the protest, activists wait to have their likeness drawn in caricature by Willa Yip, who has completed 300 such portraits.
The little slogan here, that's remark to support Hong Kong, but we kind of recall the memory. After people grow old or children grow up, they saw the portrait again, they will remind them that they have been in this remarkable movement.
Walking past Yip's lamp-lit workstation is Zhu Fengshuo, a leader of the 1989 Tiananmen Square student uprising. Zhu recalls, during the June 4th massacre, the iconic sculpture of the goddess of democracy and other works of protest art were targeted by the Chinese army.
You see here there is umbrella men, it's very similar. People created things that represent the ideal. The tank can destroy the one of it, but it cannot destroy the idea that's spreading, and that's here today.
Wong agrees there are lessons to be learned from Tiananmen. His group has already begun archiving the works on display, so they are not lost to future generations.
This collective body of work would be, I presume or I predict, would be very important as part of heritage of Hong Kong, but it may not be properly or properly documented by the official institutions such as our museums or our art galleries.
Despite the festive spirit of the umbrella movement, the day will inevitably come when the police attempt to retake the occupied streets. To preserve their legacy, teams of activists are on standby to rush in and save as many works as possible. Ivan Broadhead for VOA News, Hong Kong.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. And for more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 300 and 600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching, and good night from Washington.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords. In the United States, federal laws are made by the Congress. Listen to this story about two bills.
Even if the immigration bill passes in the Senate, lawmakers in the House of Representatives are considering their own reforms. Agriculture also is a focus this week, as the Senate prepares to vote on the Farm Bill. The House is expected to take up the package later this month.
The House of Representatives is made up of 435 elected members. The number of representatives each state has depends on the number of people in the state.
Often, this group of lawmakers is called simply the House. Now, when you hear the term House of Representatives, you'll know what these newswords mean.